Uh-oh. Okay, we'll start with this. Here's what Gabby Fundora might need to do to become a bigger star. Gabriela Fundora already stands miles ahead of where any other female fighter in her boots deserves to be, the undisputed women's flyweight champion and boxing's youngest ever undisputed champion of the four-belt era. Fundora added to her growing canon Saturday with a 7th-round destruction of Mariling Badillo in Oceanside, California. Now 16-0 with 8 KOs, Fundora, 23, has achieved in under 4 years as a professional more than nearly any fighter, man or woman, could even reasonably hope to dream for their careers. She has the power, the record, the standout size. At 5 foot 9 inches, she is an incredibly tall flyweight, the demeanor and the looks to be a bona fide American sports star, all of which raises a question. Why isn't she? By any athletic and professional measure, Fundora is a paragon within boxing, yet she is still best known to many fans of the sport as the younger sister of unified junior middleweight champion Sebastian Fundora. Saturday was her first main event, and although she performed brilliantly, a rough estimate of the crowd at the Front Wave Arena counted only about 1,000 attendees. That's not exactly the stuff that lands you in front of cereal boxes. To her credit, Fundora appeared to enjoy her moment and seemed genuinely thankful for the opportunity when discussing her first show as a headliner with DAZN's Chris Mannix in the ring after the fight. So what's it gonna take? Because she's got the highlight reel knockouts, she's got the skill, the accolades. Rome wasn't built in a day, so what you have to remember is that Gabby is still very young. She hasn't been a professional all that long, and she's campaigning at a weight where a lot of Americans really don't pay attention. What familiar female fighters they are acquainted with campaign at heavier weights than flyweight. So if the question is, what is it going to take to make Gabby a household name? More of the same. Just keep doing what you're doing. Hey, how'd you guys like it today? Fundora asked the crowd, which was boisterous in its response despite its numbers. This is amazing. I'm glad to be headlining. We're Golden Boy's first female to headline a show. Another piece of history made in the books. Fundora and her promoters are making the usual moves to angle her towards stardom, including a training camp visit with the troops at Camp Pendleton, practically walking distance from the Oceanside venue. When Mannix asked her about the perks of main event status, a bigger dressing room, a dedicated fight introduction, Fundora had an immediate answer. I actually just want to thank the color guard at Camp Pendleton for having them come, she said. I just want to thank all the troops that are currently serving or did serve. Star making is far from an exact science in any industry, but one ingredient that may be forgotten, especially in boxing and in particular for the women, is time. Fundora is just getting started at this. Saturday was her first main event and Front Wave Arena's first boxing show. Badillo, despite coming in at 19-0 with 1 draw, was a virtual unknown outside of Mexico. Although Fundora is active for a world-class fighter, winning over the public by performing just 3 times in a calendar year is a real trick to pull. Fundora can take heart in the recent business done by Katie Taylor and Amanda Serrano, who in 2022 put on the first women's headliner at New York City's Madison Square Garden and actually sold it out. When they fought again last year, they received the second billing, only behind the massive Mike Tyson vs. Jake Paul fight, and courted a whole new audience with a fantastic fight broadcast for free on Netflix, a willingness and ability to change divisions. Fundora has discussed moving both up or down will be an important asset for her moving forward. Clarissa Shields has had to move up and down the dial, and even outside of the sport, into MMA, to build her audience. The nature of the question, what does Gabby have to do to be a household name? And what that really addresses is, how could she be an undisputed champion already, but not yet a household name? And what is it going to take? Well, need I remind you that Gennady Golovkin made many defenses of his WBA title before anybody in America really knew who he was. It took time. Rome was not built in a day. What applied to him applies to her. You gotta stay the course, stay in character, keep fighting, and keep winning. Fundora needs a foil, and the reality is that, for now, there are relatively few elite fighters in the women's ranks. If she can't become a star by unifying all the belts in one division, it may take 2 or 3, or a weight cut, or a weight gain, to find an opponent worthy of sharing the ring with her. Don't forget, it took Floyd Mayweather Jr. years to hitch on as a mainstream star. Sometimes it just takes time. Fundora has that and plenty more in her toolbox to eventually make it happen. And I personally think it will. Personally, I think at 22, 23 years old, no, she's not going to be a star yet. Not yet. But if she can stay in character throughout these divisions as she climbs up and continues to add those belts to her collection, eventually people are going to start to notice. Strategic placement of her fights on Golden Boy Promotions' shows is pivotal. You want to put her on the undercards of fights that are going to draw a lot of attention. I don't think Gabby is yet in a place where she should be headlining. Not yet. You're going to say, well, she's undisputed. Don't you think it's time? But just being undisputed by itself doesn't guarantee that you're a household name. The hope is that by the time a fighter becomes undisputed, they will have amassed considerable marquee value. But it's not an exact science, because Gabby became undisputed champion relatively fast. And she's fought some really good and formidable fighters on the way there, but they were not fighters that the casual audience is familiar with. So all she really has to do is be patient, stay focused, keep fighting, and keep winning. Men's welterweight news. Ryan Garcia and Romero are set to clash for a WBA welterweight title. The World Boxing Association, through its championships committee, has greenlit a high-stakes welterweight title fight between Ryan Garcia and Romero, scheduled to take place next month on the 2nd in New York, in a resolution issued Tuesday, April 22nd, 2025. The WBA committee also named Ennis as the organization's super champion at 147. The decision followed an in-depth evaluation of Ennis' performances, including multiple defenses of his IBF title and a pristine professional record of 35-0 with 30 knockouts. With the new designation comes responsibility. Ennis is now mandated to defend his super championship against his mandatory challenger, Giyasov, who fought on his undercard. The division's official mando. Notably, Giyasov previously stepped aside to allow the unification bout between Ennis and a Montestanianos. Despite being next in the rotation for a shot per WBA rules, Ennis must face Giyasov within 120 days of his April 12th victory over Stanionis. Furthermore, the winner of Ennis versus Giyasov will be required to face the winner of Garcia versus Romero. According to WBA Rule C-17, in exceptional circumstances, the Championships Committee and the President may designate a champion as a super champion and may establish criteria for a super championship. The committee and President may determine conditions and requirements of defenses and retention of such title. Acting within its regulatory authority, the WBA has elevated Ennis to super champion status, while Garcia and Romero will battle for the vacant WBA World Welterweight Championship, adding even more heat to an already explosive welterweight division, which is just a fanciful way of saying you manufactured a title so that you could crash their party. You manufactured another world title so that you could collect sanctioning fees from not just Ennis, who was already champion before these two got there, but so that you could collect sanctioning fees from them too. And adding all of these different titles to the welterweight division doesn't actually add anything, any value. You're just trying to siphon as much money from as many fighters as you can, to the point you're watering down these divisions. It really is more of the same. But in the case of Ryan Garcia, it is particularly frivolous, because here you have a guy who's coming off of serving a suspension for doping in the sport of boxing, which I thought was supposed to be a bad thing. You guys may as well be rewarding him for it. Take a second to consider that Ryan Garcia was never a bona fide champion at 135, at 140. Here you are cooking up an alphabet title for him at 147. And you're doing it because nobody in boxing actually cares about pads. It needs to be said. Nobody in boxing actually cares about doping in the sport of boxing, because this is a whole alphabet organization doing this, making this decision that right off of his suspension,
get that man an alphabet title.
What likely motivated the decision was Ryan's earning power, what he stands to make from the Romero fight and the Devin Haney rematch, if he and Devin can get there, that another fighter in that exact same situation may not get this olive branch. But if Ryan's getting it, it's because he can draw, it's because he can earn. And it's because the WBA want in. Ryan and Rolly are gonna do whatever they're gonna do, irrespective of a WBA trinket title. It's gonna sell whatever it's gonna sell. And the same applies to a Devin Haney rematch. That rematch was never about a belt, or some belts, and you don't need to add belts to it to make it sell. Ryan himself said many years ago he doesn't actually care about belts, and I don't think his audience does either. So when you make this decision, that has more to do with you than it has to do with Ryan. That has more to do with you than the fighters, making it more obvious that doping in the sport of boxing, and whether or not you want to castigate someone for it, is mostly situational. If David Benavidez, for example, tested positive for a banned substance tomorrow, do you think his audience would castigate him, his fans, because he is working with an ex-dope dealer, the likes of a Victor Conti? He is working with Memo Heredia. That guy used to distribute peds, the same as Victor, and it very rarely gets brought up outside of this channel. Just saying, nobody in boxing really cares about peds. They don't. Oftentimes, the pearl clutching is a means to weaponize the accusation or weaponize the result. But the reactions vary from fighter to fighter. Where Conor Benn got castigated for it for 2 years, look at Ryan. He actually had people defending him. Sanctioning bodies are going as far as manufacturing titles for him. Stand by my original assertion. Nobody in boxing really wants a cleaner sport. Underneath it all, nobody really cares. It's just about keeping up appearances, covering all the bases, covering your ass. Liability. But as far as the moral turpitude of the athletes in a sport as dangerous as this one, pursuing a competitive edge via banned substances, synthetic drugs, nobody really gives a shit. So the WBA has gone ahead and ordered the Shakram Giyasov fight, which I'm not against, by the way. I think that makes for a great fight. But more importantly, it's not like Boots Ennis has been having much luck with Brian Norman, Team Norman, the WBO champion. Rumor has it that Brian is headed to Japan for his next fight to make a defense of the brown belt against Jin Sasaki. So in a situation where Brian's going to Japan, Mario Barrios may be facing Manny Pacquiao over the summer months, fighting Shakram Giyasov in place of one of them. I'll take it. And because the fight is a mandated title fight, we don't have to wait a year and a day to see it. They have to do it in a timely fashion. I don't think this is necessarily what Team Boots want. They want to further unify the division. But I just told you, Team Norman are going to Japan. Mario Barrios is fighting Manny Pacquiao. You've got this guy in front of you. Right. Take care of him. Or you can move up. You can move up now. Which wouldn't be a bad thing. You see so many people say that the welterweight division is dead. And Jaron Ennis, given his level of talent, won't truly be tested until he moves up to 154, which comparatively is a much deeper division with more intriguing fights, whereas Boots would be the massive favorite over practically every welterweight that's out there. At 154, it's a little harder to play big man on campus. He's got a choice. You can satisfy this mandatory and continue to pursue undisputed, or you can move up now. Boots versus Giyasov isn't actually a bad fight. Based on the Amantis Stanionis that Boots just fought, I think Shakram Giyasov would have beat him. I think Shakram Giyasov would beat Mario Barrios too. That Shakram Giyasov, in spite of not being a champion, is just as, if not more formidable than they are. So if Boots is fighting him next, I'm not against it. Standout amateur, unbeaten in the paid ranks, I'll take it. Now if Boots doesn't, if by some chance Boots Ennis decides to move up now, he's abandoning ship and abandoning that undisputed campaign, and he goes to junior middle, you know what happens. Giyasov becomes Ryan's problem. Don't you see the way they structured this thing? If Boots were to leave now, the winner of Rolly versus Ryan would then have to face Giyasov. They mandated that the winner of Boots versus Giyasov has to fight the winner of Garcia versus Romero, likely with the intention of facilitating a fight between Boots and Ryan, since Ryan is so heavily favored to beat Rolly Romero, and Boots would be heavily favored to beat Shakram Giyasov. The intention here is to put these two guys in the ring with each other, facilitated through mandates. In spite of that effort, I don't see a day where Ryan Garcia and Boots Ennis fight. I just don't see it. Nothing about Ryan Garcia's career so far tells me that he's ready to fight somebody like Boots Ennis. He had a lot of size and power for a 135-pounder and a 140-pounder, but at 147, against the real 147, you ain't so big, you ain't so strong. I know you beat the crap out of Devin, but it's not like you knocked him out. That would have been a stronger statement if you actually finished your food. If you finished him off. I mean, you knocked him down 3 times, but he got up 3 times. Which begs the question, if you couldn't stop Devin, a light-punching 135-pounder who moved up, how the hell are you gonna stop Boots? He isn't. Now, Ryan's got a lot of size and a lot of power as far as the young guys, but he doesn't have more size, and he doesn't have more power. He doesn't have more knockouts than Boots Ennis. They're conservatively, if they were to fight, say, next or after next, I think Boots would be the logical choice. Overwhelmingly. And that's why I don't think it's gonna happen. I mean, Ryan's next fight is supposed to be Devin Haney, but say Devin loses to Jose. Ryan can fight Jose. Ryan can fight the winner of Lopez versus Barboza. He has so many safer options that I don't think he goes in this direction, irrespective of what the WBA mandates. If all those rumors about a Barrios versus Pacquiao fight are true, Ryan can fight the winner of that fight. To where I don't think for a second I will ever see a day that Ryan Garcia and Jaron Ennis share the same ring. As far as I'm concerned, it doesn't happen. Ryan has too many options, safer ones, than Jaron Ennis. So the WBA can convene and hold their little meetings, stipulate their little deadlines, but Ryan has the option of not abiding by them. These stipulations are only as effective as the fighter's desire to procure that alphabet title, that particular one. But there are others. If Ryan had to choose between fighting Boots or fighting Barrios, gee, I wonder what direction he'd go in. Bottom line, I don't think this fight happens. The WBA, for whatever reason, may be trying to facilitate it on their own, but I don't think it's gonna go down. I don't think it's gonna happen.